Hey all, Pixel here. We are getting started on swapping out the dashboard in my van. So I already know from prior experience that the main dashboard shouldn't be a problem, nor should the lower console. Any differences there should be pretty darn minor between the 80s van that my new dashboard, that one over there, came out of, and this one. The big difference for a 90s van is the gauge cluster. As you can see, the 90s van has a square gauge cluster, and the earlier vans have this, which isn't actually fundamentally different. If you look at the two large ones and the two round ones in the center, same deal, the turn signals are in the same place. So they didn't fundamentally change things, but they tried to update the look a little bit. So I've already unscrewed this. If I take this off, this cluster, or this cover, won't quite fit. It fits everywhere except it hits the glass in here at the top. So when I pulled the other van, I pulled the cluster out of it because it's just late enough that it has the electric speedo cluster and not the earlier mechanical one. So I'm going to pull this cluster out and sort of see how similar things are. This cluster seems to be missing several warning lights, and I was playing with the odometer reset here, which is kind of rusty, and it doesn't seem to be resetting the odometer. So I think this cluster is bad, but I want to get an idea of how close they are. I was thinking about swapping parts between them, but that's looking harder and harder also. So let's get this cluster out. All right, so I pulled the clusters. This is the old one. This is the one from my van. And the big and obvious thing is there's an extra circuit here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So yeah, there's an extra thing here, and there's now a ground there. So these are not actually compatible. Even though they've got the same plug, it looks like things route a little bit differently. And I don't know if it's because things are in different places on here, but they all connect to the same thing, but it's not a simple one-to-one. There's definitely some discrepancies. And I don't even want to risk plugging this cluster in now, because now I have a fear that if one of these is a ground that should be a power or whatnot, I could actually short something out somewhere, whether it's in this or in the van, and cause a problem. So using this cluster is out. Using parts of this cluster is also out, because this just occurred to me is I was going to oh, maybe I can swap the faces or the gauges or something. But the problem is this odometer reset comes out over here, and this odometer reset comes out over here. So even something as fundamental as the front glass is not interchangeable, and the front glass is the piece that is the problem. The gauges are actually reset at the same light depth as this, but the front glass curves outwards. So what I'm going to have to do instead is trim this to fit on the inside here. And the other thing is the turn signals are in this cluster here, whereas if you can see on this one, they come forward. So I'm going to have to try and see if I can figure out a way to make the turn signals brighter. And I'm probably going to hog out the holes here so that the light from those arrows can come through here clearer. That's probably going to be, a little bit of a compromise, but I think I'm okay with it. But I'm really glad that it looks like, even though this is going to be a pain in the butt, it shouldn't be direly difficult. So I'm going to actually do this work when I'm at the point of putting the new dash into the van and getting the cluster situated in there. All right, next up, I'm going to strip and wash this dash inside and out. I basically just need the outer shell of it, so I can pull out all the vents and everything and just toss all of that. Because this has got rat or mouse stuff in it, so I don't even want to risk those vents. So that's all going to just get gotten rid of. The metal braces I'll probably keep, but then I'm going to scrub it inside and out. I've got some simple green in a bucket. I'm going to try and do this and all the other parts, but it looks like there might be a storm coming. The wind's blowing like hell. So I'm going to get as much of this done as possible and go from there. All right, this is clean, but it's not the result I had hoped for. Went over everything with the simple green and then went over it again with a super cleaner from Chemical Guys. So the way these dashes are done is that they're this vinyl is vacuum formed over the plastic underpiece. So actually, I don't know if these are black scuffs on top of it or scratches in the vinyl, but this is actually kind of in rough shape. You can see this has been cleaned, so this is discoloration more than it's dirt. There may be a little bit of dirt in there, but that's primarily discoloration. There's discoloration and scratches and wear all over it. I don't know how well it's all showing up, but this spot right here, my wet fingerprints around, had a piece of Velcro stuck on it, and therefore is much more the original color. And as I zoom out, you can kind of see just how not just faded but blotchy everything is. The front piece here is much closer because it's plastic that's been painted, not vinyl. So if I were to just put this dash in, it would look beat up and dirty and gross. It is a red dash, but that's not an improvement. Foolishly, this wasn't a possibility I accounted for. I just assumed, oh, I'll find a red dash, it'll be great, I'll put it in. But this one is not really super great. Realistically, the best thing to do with this dash would be to dye it, but I've had problems with that in the past, as we've seen. Though the advantage of dyeing this one is that I'd be rejuvenating a red dash. So if it did get a scratch, it would just be a slightly different color of red in the scratches, as opposed to the dash that's in it now, where when it gets a scratch, it's blue underneath. I also learned a couple things from doing that one that might make this one go a little bit better. So that's a possibility. But right now I'm a little bit torn. The other thing is, this piece, the lower one, is in even rougher shape. Like, this has got scratches and dirt and whatnot, but it's also got physical damage to it. There's multiple holes that were badly drilled in over here and then weirdly plugged. This little thing here, there's supposed to be a front lip to it that is broken off completely. Either that or it's installed backwards, but no, I think that's broken off. There's a hole back here, stuff like that. One of the mounts is in not great shape, but that's much less concerning. So even though, again, this is a red one, this is not a very good red one. So I'm not sure what to do. I think what I'm going to do is store this dash for the moment, including the lower part. Store the other parts. I'm going to clean them all first, but I'm going to put them away. But I'm only going to put this piece on for now, because this piece, because it's brighter, looks better and is not a match for the color I dyed this dashboard. But it's not terrible either. Like, it doesn't match, but it looks more like GM bad color match over the years than anything else. And I can run this and get most of the effect I want, and then come back later after I've made a decision on the dash, maybe after I found a better lower part in red, and swap out the dash. But just knowing I have a proper red dash will also reduce the stress on me about the fact that this dash keeps getting little scratches in it that show the blue. So I think that's what I'm going to do for right now, is figure out how to get this mounted on here and move forward with that, and put that away as a future me project. I may use this piece, though it's got a scuff in it. I think I'm going to use this piece also, because my little surround like this has got this weird faux metal finish that matches the 90s bezel, but isn't going to match at all once I change that out. So I think I'll just put this black one in as well, so that that'll be kind of hidden. Or not hidden, but that won't be a weird mismatch. Yeah. I'm a little bummed, but it's alright. I mean, I paid so little for all this stuff that the fact that this dash is not perfect and amazing and ready to go in. Doesn't stress me super much. I might even have some red still. The dye. I have some dye, but it's the wrong one. I've got some of the Firethorn red. I used 2 reds when I dyed this dashboard. If you go back to the earlier video, you can see the color I wanted was kind of between 2 of their colors. And so I base coated it with one and then top coated it with another, because the cool thing about these SEM dyes is that they're translucent until you build up enough of it, so you can tint things by just putting down one color and then misting over a few coats of the other color, but not going all the way until you've covered the previous one. So the downside is trying to match. Now that I did this in 2 colors is a problem, but yeah. Anyway, I don't have enough of that, even if that was the right color, I don't have enough of it. But yeah, I think that's where we're going to go with this. So let's get that bezel done, and then I can say I succeeded at something today. So the thing with this, like I said before, is that it hits the top of this. This actually, I was noticing, is mostly flat and then curves up very sharply at the top. So most of this is going to fit probably just fine. Like the bottom actually, I think will just go right in more or less. It's the tiniest bit high. I'm not too bothered, but the top obviously needs to go in. You ever have that moment when you're a fucking idiot? I literally just cut the bottoms of these instead of the tops of these. I don't even know how I made that mistake. I think I laid this down, didn't even think about it, just hacked into them. I can't believe I just did that. I'm so upset with myself right now. Okay, the holes in the dash are, I don't have to worry about bleed over. Like, that's the only reason these would need to be tight, is for bleed over on a dash designed that way. So I don't have to worry about bleed over because these are now not going to fit. They already weren't going to fit completely flush all the way around. So I can clean up the bottoms. Because the inside of this is black, I can repaint it so I can hide that. I was already probably going to have to do that. This is not a complete fuck up. It's still a fuck up, but it's not a complete fuck up. At this point, what makes the most sense is to cut the tops, get this to fit right, grind out the things, and if the bottom looks terrible, then at least I know the process for when I manage to track down another one of these. I genuinely can't believe I did this. Like, I'm not even angry. I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with you, man? So yeah, let's get back to it, I guess. All right. hitting somewhere. Okay, so it's hitting the cut on this upper circle is too steep, so it's hitting there. And I think these other cuts, yeah, I basically need to take the, where the two cuts are like this, I need to take that peak off in certain places. But we're much closer. This is still not going in properly in this corner, but I think I might just live with that. The top is almost, like it's almost fitting, but there's still a little bit more gap here in the middle. And the rest, like I could live with it like this if I had to, but I don't. So I'm going to come in with the flat disc on the grinder and sort of smooth everything a little bit and take off the higher spots. It's like right here is hitting, that's not really hitting, that's not really hitting, but it's really ugly. That's hitting, and then this upper circle up here is hitting. Fortunately, the stuff that I cut wrong doesn't look too, like it's gonna drive me up the wall, because I will know. But it's not awful. I'm gonna still keep an eye out for another one of these and do it right, but it's not horrible. It's gonna be the kind of thing I'm gonna have to resist the urge to point out to other people to bother the hell out of me. But it's not actually effed up or wrong. And yeah, that little nubbin here is hitting the mount that holds the plastic in place there. So unfortunately I can't really do anything about it. You can kind of take off a little on the top. No, I can't even do that because that's where the screw catches. That's right there. I think I'm just going to live with that corner being out slightly because there's not a good solution there. Alright, so I've smoothed all of these down. I have a suspicion this one's still too tall, but tried to just basically give all of them a top to bottom bevel so it looks like that's how it's supposed to be. And that's hitting hot. Okay, so we're moving the problem. So the center, yeah, now the tops of these may be the problem again. Like this is hitting where I thought it would. There's a little bit of a gap. This is now hitting at the top. That's not hitting at all. And that's hitting sort of up in this corner. Though that might not be, that might be a thing that once the other ones are solved. It looks like the big problem is this edge that I thought was still too high and this one here around the fuel gauge. Alright, next round. And that fits perfectly. The gap is the same all the way across the top. It is definitely up against the plastic lens in some spots, but not problematically. This corner is still out because it's going to be out. I also went full fuck it and drilled these out with a step drill. So now if I turn on the hazards, yeah, that's better. It's not perfect. You have to be staring straight on it, even then there's a little bit of overlap, but it's good enough that you can clearly see the flashers. So at this point, I think I need to clean this again because it's now covered in red dust from all the cutting and grinding. And then I think I'm going to take it in and down to my model bench and touch up the chrome around the edges and some of the flat black here and there. I'm going to touch up these, and then it can get bolted in for good. All right, and here it is during the day. I just installed it after touching up all the paint and chrome and whatnot. This screw's no problem, this screw's no problem. This screw's not in because I'm going to put my phone mount there again. but I can see the screw hole. It lines up just fine. This one went in okay. This one was actually not a problem at all. That was the one that I was worried about. The interesting thing that happened is when I put this screw in, this part over here popped outwards. And I suspect it's because it's pressed against the plastic over here. I suspect that, like, the angle of these two screws is pulling this against here, is forcing that outwards. So I may take this back out later and take a little bit more material off the top of this arc. But for right now, it doesn't interfere with anything, so I'm not worrying about it. And I think it looks... I apologize for the fact that you can't see it super great because of the sun, but what can I do? It fits pretty good. There's definitely a different profile to it. Like this edge is a little different, but the most interesting thing is this vent sticks out. And I realized it's because the old style one, or the original one to this 95, has this little fake bezel thing that sticks out, so they changed the design of this. So I'm going to have to get an earlier vent for this side. The dashboard I have has them, but again, mice, I'm not putting any of the heating system in there because of the chance of stuff having gotten trapped in it. So I need to find an earlier bezel to replace that one. I'm going to keep an eye out for a nice chrome set of all of them, because the chrome ones just both look nicer and more retro than these. This piece I haven't put in yet because I have to... Oh, never mind, the microphone decided to fall off. But this should just be a matter of once I can get my fingers in here enough. There we go. This just pops off grudgingly. And then I just have to make sure I don't pinch the mic wire. It's the microphone for my Bluetooth, so it is a useful thing to have. And then that's that. And then now, that's actually pretty significantly changed the whole look of the dashboard. You know, between the round gauges and the lack of that silver trim, I mean, that's a very different look for the dashboard. So that was pretty good for not a lot of work. And the excess that I cut off of here, I wish I hadn't, but it's not as big a deal as I thought it would be. Yeah, I'm happy. That was a nice little project, and it's definitely done a bunch to change the look of the dashboard. So that'll hold me over until I can get that other dashboard dyed and in here. I need to get some stickers for all my scratches. I think that might be a solution, is get myself some nice vintage stickers for the dash. So while my hopes of a full dashboard replacement were in fact dashed, I'm going to take this as a small win, because the basic thing I wanted, which was the older look to the dashboard, I achieved, and this will tide me over until I get that other dash in, and then until I get a nice center console. So we're going to call it there for now. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.